What I would do for my own dog at every age. If I was getting a puppy, maybe I was adopting an adult dog, or maybe you're one of those angels out there and you're adopting a senior dog. If this is the first podcast that you are listening to, Apple or Spotify, it is so great to connect and to electronically, virtually meet you. I'm Dr. Bamonte, a veterinarian of over a decade, and I am really rooted in, no pun intended, taking a functional and more holistic approach to pet care. If you're watching this on YouTube, you get to see me waving at you. And so I want to talk about what I would do for my own dog at every age. And I think so many people get dogs, they get puppies. And I know there's many of us that adopt dogs that are older. And so I do want to talk about every stage because every stage is so important and builds upon the next one. And so when you're getting a puppy, you're building more than the next 10 or 12 years with this pet, or 14 or 15 or 16 or 18 or 19. Like, why can't that be more normal? When people or you bring home a puppy, you're usually probably thinking about potty training. You're thinking about your schedule. You're thinking about what to feed them. You're thinking about how can I get home on my lunch break to let them out. You're thinking maybe about socialization. Maybe you're even surviving the land shark phase where they want to teeth on everything, including you. However, from my perspective, you're building something so much bigger and so much more important. You're building the foundation of that pet's entire life. We can even extrapolate this to kittens. That first year that you have them, that you bring them home, it is not about trying to create this perfect lifestyle and this perfect pet. It is about creating resilience. Because that is one of the biggest things I focus on when it comes to your pet. And using their nutrition is such a valuable way because it is the one thing you do for them every single day. It is not chasing a trend. It is not chasing noise that is out there. It is not obsessing over one ingredient in the food or one ingredient not in the food. It is providing a diet, a lifestyle that supports their growth, supports their development, and a healthy gut microbiome. We're learning more every year, but almost every day, about how the gut influences your pet's functions with their immune system, their digestion, their inflammation, their behavior, their anxiety, their skin, their poop, their ears. The healthier that foundation becomes early in life, the better equipped many pets and dogs are as they get older. So I believe this is a wonderful time to establish a baseline. It's a wonderful time to establish alignment. While every puppy does not need every single test or every avenue, there are situations where functional testing can provide valuable insight into gut health, food intolerance or sensitivities, nutrient status, environmental toxin exposure, especially if these puppies are experiencing a lot of issues from the beginning. Because we don't always know where they come from. We don't always know the environment, especially if you're adopting a puppy from a shelter. So understanding where they're at or where they're starting can allow you to make more intentional decisions going forward so that foundation is even more solid. And so puppies also absolutely need exercise, right? They have what I call a lot of puppy power. Some pets outgrow it, some don't. Or again, if you want to extrapolate this to cats, kitten powder, kitten power. They also need appropriate exercise. And when it comes to food or it comes to exercise, more is not always better. Better is better. Growing joints are developing. Repetitive high impact activities can sometimes do more harm than good. So varied enrichment is really important. In fact, I see pets in my neighborhood that are younger that owners are working on their manners and their focus while walking so that they can be focused on the enrichment and the sniffs and the movement rather than being triggered by other dogs. So it is absolutely valuable to start things that are going to carry your pet for the rest of their life. So walking outside, I see it a lot with pet parents. This is, again, more for dogs and cats that, well, I don't really walk him because he's reactive. Of course, and maybe this is not the first episode you're listening or watching this, my mind goes to why. Why are we like this? Is this a gut thing? Did something traumatic happen? Is this an orthopedic issue where their neck hurts and they need to see a chiropractor? So every time they walk and they yank on the collar and on the leash, they hurt, and so they feel defenseless. So if that dog comes near me, I'm not going to be able to protect myself because everything hurts. So I'm going to be on protection mode. And so doing all things as a puppy. So getting their nutrition right, being mindful of their gut health, being in mind of the medications they're exposed to at a very young age, probably chiropractic adjustments. In fact, a year ago, chiropractors that I referred to that are certified in animal care were sending me pictures of a puppy that this was a good lesson for me. This puppy looked extremely neurological, like congenital, this is not good, humane euthanasia. This puppy's brainstem was so compressed from its neck being displaced that it was affecting its mobility. And after several adjustments, this puppy started to walk more normal. And so doing all these things is a foundation to set them up for better health down the road. Now these puppies become young adults, or these kittens become young adult cats. And so prevention starts before there are problems, and having that mindset. So once a pet reaches adulthood, many owners, I think, get a sigh of relief. They're house trained, or maybe if it's a kitten, they don't have the zoomies at night. They're on structured routines and schedules with going potty or using the litter box, or how often you're feeding them, or finally everybody in the household can eat the same food because they're all of adult stage. They're healthy. They look healthy. They're active. They look active. They're eating. Ironically, this is when I think prevention means the most, is when everything looks fine rather than waiting until there's a problem. Because healthy doesn't always mean that nothing is changing. It just means we don't see it yet. So one of the simplest things I'd prioritize in maintaining an ideal body condition. This goes for cats and for dogs. Not just watching the number on the scale, but looking at them. Do they have a nice hourglass figure? Can they jump on counters if they're a cat easily? Are they sedentary a lot? So paying attention to whether you can easily feel the ribs with a little bit of light pressure. Can you see that hourglass shape? And so are they carrying extra fat? Especially if this happens at a young age, it is going to get harder and harder as they get older to remove it. And studies show that consistently maintaining an ideal body condition in pets is associated with a longer lifespan and a longer health span, meaning they're not only living longer, they're living better longer and reducing a lot of chronic diseases. And the reason for this too is that extra fat is very inflammatory, and fat can be considered an organ, and a lot of toxins can accumulate in fats. So being able to regulate that. Also paying a lot of close attention to their dental health. I think people don't pay attention to their pet's dental health until there is an issue, until there's really, really bad breath, which I know can happen at any stage, or until their teeth look really bad. That's when we start focusing, rather than, hey, while things look good, let's pay attention to their dental health, because the bacteria here, you probably have heard me say it, the bacteria here, I'm pointing to my mouth if you're not watching on YouTube. Talk to the bacteria here, and I'm pointing to my stomach, for us and for them. And so having a really good establishment of oral health can really help influence positively the gut health as well. And so it's not just about bad breath. It is about that the dental disease doesn't just stay in the mouth. It can become painful, yes, although I do see many pets eat through really nasty mouths, is that it contributes to inflammation throughout the whole body. And so also at this stage, I start thinking proactively about functional testing, not because your dog or your cat is sick, but for the very reason that they don't look sick. And you don't want to wait until, I don't understand, I hear this all the time with pet parents, I'm doing air quotes, I don't understand why this is happening, nothing has changed. And so depending on the individual pet, that may include evaluating their gut microbiome, their vitamin D, food intolerances, environmental intolerances. Have we accumulated mold exposure or glyphosate, especially if they're eating kibble foods? And it's not even just that. In fact, I have a client and a patient right now that we found out because of these tests, she has, I'm going to say had, because I don't know if she's remediated yet and retested, has mold in her HVAC system in her house. So that's going to negatively impact her health too. And so this is a way for us to try and make everyone better. And so these tests aren't about searching for diseases that aren't there. It is about searching for things before they become an issue, before you're frustrated, before you're scared, before you're crying and you're at the vet and you're like, I don't understand what's wrong with my pet. And my pet is not acting normal. They're about understanding your pet as a whole patient and creating a personalized plan for them rather than waiting for illness to dictate the conversation. We are taking the reins. Middle-aged pets, this is where I definitely start saying we need to start looking closer if we haven't already. And that is because middle age is probably the stage I think that gets overlooked the most. That and young adults, I feel like. It's that middle area of a young adult. Again, this may be a little bit breed and species specific to middle age. because nothing dramatic often has happened yet, or this is when things start to happen. Your pet is still playful. They're still excited for dinner. They're still excited for their walks. They're still having normal bowel movements. They're still happy. But often there are subtle changes, and that's how it begins. Maybe they're slower getting into the car. Maybe they're sleeping a little bit more. Maybe their poops are coming and going, or, now we had one ear infection 3 years ago, but now we've had 2 already this year. So sometimes people will just say, oh, it's just because they're getting older, or these things just happen. But just because they are common does not mean they are normal. And so I absolutely want routine blood work. And I think routine blood work doesn't have to start when they're a middle-aged pet. I think it can start when they're young and doing it every year. And this is where conventional diagnostics still have a value and still have a role. Looking at that blood work, looking at the urinalysis. I'd also look beyond conventional diagnostics. Functional testing, again, help identifying trends before they become a bigger problem, before the disease has to dictate the conversation. So if my pet started developing reoccurring skin issues, digestive changes, signs of inflammation, their weight is just not stable, whether they're underweight or overweight, or things that we just can't explain, I would explore looking at their gut microbiome, their vitamin D, because that's so integral for their immune system, heavy metal exposure, glyphosate exposure, mold toxin exposures. And every test should have an answer to a question, not simply satisfying curiosity. Now, sometimes it can be, hey, I'm curious if my pet has these, everything looks okay, but I want to make sure. And so that's how you start evaluating differently. Because what worked at 6 months old or 2 years old may not be what supports them right now. For one part, nutrition isn't static. It can change. And to be honest, their food should be changing. It should be changing. It shouldn't be they eat this one food for their whole life. That's how we don't support the gut. That's how we don't support diversity in the gut. It should evolve alongside your pet. Senior pets, senior dogs, senior cats, because comfort for them becomes part of their healthcare plan. One of my favorite things about senior pets is that they really do teach us to slow down, because they sometimes are. They don't always need maybe the longer hike. They don't always maybe need the 10 walks. They don't sometimes need longer and more. They just need more intention. And so if I had a senior pet or a senior dog, in fact, my dog is approaching technically seniorhood, he just turned 9, my priorities would shift towards preserving that quality of life, thinking about health span and lifespan, which I think you really should be thinking about at all stages. Pain management becomes incredibly important. Cognition support becomes incredibly important. And it's not just severe pain, it's subtle pain. It's repeated grunts in certain movements. It's not being able to walk as far. It's hesitation with jumping on and off the couch. It's for cats, maybe not enjoying using the litter box anymore or jumping on the countertops. Pets don't usually wake up one morning and limp dramatically. It's rare. It happens, but it's rare. It's usually small changes. Things take longer to show up. Maybe they avoid the stairs. Maybe they're hesitant to go out at nighttime because their vision is off. These little changes can matter. And so how can we support them? So muscle maintenance when they're older is a huge priority, because as they age, their muscle mass decreases. So maintaining the strength can help support their mobility so they can go in and out of the litter box, so they can go for their walks and they can have that independence and overall happiness and enjoy the things that they want to enjoy. And again, this is where I think functional testing can become exceptionally valuable. Rather than assuming every change is simply old age or this is just quote unquote what happens, is you want to, and I want to understand what might be things that we can modify, things that we can support them, because age is not a disease. Just because they are 12 or 13 or 14 does not make them, that's not a diagnosis, that's a metric. And so is there inflammation that we can support? Is the gut microbiome contributing to immune dysfunction or inflammation or even cognitive decline? Are vitamin D levels adequate? Are there mineral imbalances or environmental exposures that we need to be aware of that are causing more load on their body? Sometimes these answers allow us to improve their quality of life in a way we wouldn't have considered otherwise. Mental enrichment matters. Snifaris when you go out on the walk. I know sometimes you're on a mission, you're like, we gotta go potty and that's it. And you're like, you've been sniffing this blade of grass for what feels like 10 minutes. Mental enrichment is important for them. Food puzzles. Like I said, the Snifaris, learning simple new games, hiding their food in things. And you can even do this for cats. Just because a pet is older doesn't mean that their brain or their body stops benefiting from enrichment or intentionality. My goal wouldn't be to make my senior dog live forever. My goal would be to help them feel as good as possible for as long as possible. Because what good are those years if those years aren't great? I can't wait to see you on the next episode.